Hello, welcome to another video with me. My name is Melissa, and if you are new here, welcome. In today's video, we are going to be talking about astrological representation in the Kibbe body type theatric romantics. Hi, editing Melissa here. Okay, so this entire video I'm calling theatrical romantics theatric romantics, so please ignore me. That's just a mistake on my end. I apologize for the confusion, but I hope you enjoy the video. You can take inspiration from both of these, play a role in your signature style, your personal style. This is not meant to be a book of rules. This is just a means to take inspiration from. So keep that in mind. The whole goal of Kibbe is not to box yourself into a label, but to take inspiration from these women that you may have a similar Kibbe body type as. And taking inspiration from people you also share astrological placements with just amplifies that even more. Quick run through, what is theatric romantic? Very much like romantics. Theatric romantics are going to have that iconic double 8 curve that David Kibbe mentions, as we see in women like Selena Gomez and very controversial Mila Kunis. And that's where there's a little bit of confusion, where pure romantics and theatric romantics, like what is the difference? I feel like theatric romantics, as far as I have noticed in terms of a pattern, a lot of them have slightly more angularity that you see in their shoulders. They still slope down more than what you see in a dramatic or a gamine, but they're not as rounded or sloped down as a pure romantic. Their curve is there, but it's not going to be as evident as you see in a pure romantic. There's also some confusion between theatric romantic and soft gamines, which is completely understandable. They're the more petite of the Kibbe types, meaning when in the Kibbe body type, whenever the word petite is kind of thrown around, people get confused of that being a term for size or weight. That is not what it is mean in terms of that. Petite is more so of height and short limbs. So it is theoretically 5'5" and under. I wouldn't take the height numbers super seriously, but go by a feeling, because there are some people who are 5'6" and they still have a petite feeling, or they have short limbs. Soft gamines are going to be slightly more squarish and boxy. They do have some softness, but the double 8 curve is not going to be there where it is in a theatric romantic. Okay, starting out with Aries representation, Rihanna. She is an Aries rising, but it is also her moon sign and Venus sign, which I think are also great prevalent placements to take inspiration from in terms of personal style. Your moon sign, because it really speaks to who you are behind closed doors, and your Venus sign, which is the representation of love and beauty and so many other things. So bottom line is Aries is extremely prevalent in her chart. Now, how does this play a role in her style, and how do we see it? So in true Aries fashion, there is a lot of boldness. There's a lot of experimentation whenever we see Rihanna grace the streets with her style. She is experimental. I don't want to say trendy, but she tends to be the trend starter, which is in true Aries fashion. And whenever people mention that Aries are trend starters, it is very on brand for a sign that is at the beginning of the Zodiac. But I think it's just not even something that they keep in mind, but it's more so Aries, if it is prevalent in your chart, you just have that essence of you don't care. You kind of just do your own thing, and that tends to create this trend-setting type of ideal, which you definitely see in Rihanna. I feel like there has not been one moment where I see Rihanna play it safe. Even during her pregnancy, she wore these beautiful, sensual, experimental outfits. Whenever she had a say in Fenty lingerie, there was a form of experimentation with it. She also has a lot of fun with color and pattern, and I think a part of her style too is there's a bit of a dark aesthetic there. I don't want to say she embodies like a goth or punk aesthetic, but a dark and edgier style is definitely there. The whole Aries brand, experimental, bold, and sensual in a very effortless type of manner. And then in terms of how this is all present as a theatric romantic, and if you are also a theatric romantic. I feel like Aries energy just plays just naturally with a theatric romantic style in general. When it comes to theatric romantic, you are accommodating for curve with a little bit of sharpness added to that. So you see that when she wears the bustiers and the bold color, and she always has a way with adding balance, where if she's showing off skin at the top, she wears slightly baggier pants at the bottom, which is not exactly recommended for a theatric romantic, but I'm all for breaking some of these Kibbe rules, because I think when you exude a certain amount of confidence and you own it, it doesn't really matter if it follows the Kibbe rules. You know what I mean? Okay, so for Taurus representation, we have Margret. You may know her from Bye Bye Birdie, Viva Las Vegas, or for her love affair that she had with Elvis. Some, if any, like a lot of documentaries mention that she may even be the female Elvis because of how performative she was and how lively she was on stage and in her movies in general. So in terms of Taurus representation, it is her rising, her sun, moon, Jupiter, Uranus, like it is very prevalent in her chart. And just like I mentioned with Rihanna, even if it wasn't her rising, it's still extremely there in her chart. And it's not that surprising the more I did research on Margret. I've mentioned before that Taurus energy in general is very down to earth with a bit of glamour added into that. When I was looking at Margret's style, she doesn't really wear a lot of clothes. And I don't mean that like as like a bad thing, but more of a lot of what she wears is very minimalistic and simplistic in terms of there's nothing too crazy going on. And I think the glamour and loudness actually comes out in her performances. If you see the way she dances in Viva Las Vegas, it's extremely lively and out there, and it's like fireworks. And she doesn't really need her style to speak for her. She, as a performer, does that herself. She wears a lot of silhouettes that do actually accommodate to the theatric romantic Kibbe body type. She does a lot of she wears pieces that really honor her curve. Granted, a lot of what she's presented in is very sensual and very provocative, but I think they look amazing on a theatric romantic. And if you are going for a femme fatale, but not in a dark aesthetic way, but in like the 1960s mod type of style, she's a great example of that. I think her hair is also super complimentary of a theatric romantic. Like it's very voluminous and it's soft, and it very much accommodates to the curve. I think hair plays a huge role in a Kibbe body type. I don't think there should be any rules of short or long. I feel like there are great short hairstyles for theatric romantics and great long hairstyles too. But I think having a bit of volume and softness somewhere in the hairstyle really complements a theatric romantic. For Gemini representation, we have CL from To Anyone. So she is a Gemini rising, and it is also her Mars sign. I feel like Gemini traits in her are super prevalent, especially when I watched her Vogue interview when she was doing a breakdown of some of her favorite outfits for certain events like a date night, going to the airport, going to a meeting. And something that really stuck out to me that really felt like a Gemini on-brand thing to say was before she creates an outfit or is styled for the day, she thinks about what character does she want to be that day. And I feel like that is a trait of Gemini energy in general that is often misunderstood as being two-faced, but is very often misunderstood and is not seen as a benefit, where Geminis are very good at being many things all at once. And it's extremely important, especially if you are in the limelight, like CL. And it's also funny though, every character it seems that she wants to be that day tend to have a very loud and boisterous type of energy, which is great and important, especially as a performer. She also mentioned that every outfit that she wears, like the outfit formulas that she talks through, is they tend to have a lot of versatility, which I mentioned is extremely important to Geminis. Geminis are naturally social creatures. introverted or not, there's just something about Gemini energy that draws in a lot of interaction and a lot of events or things that they have to go to. So like she mentioned, there is a two-piece outfit that she wears where it's a satiny crop top and high-waisted bottom, and it's something that she could wear to a business meeting and then to the bar afterwards to hang out with the girls. And also, the outfit formula that she really favors is a crop top and high-waisted trousers, which speaks to being a theatric romantic. Love the versatility in her outfits, but which speaks to being a Gemini, but I think also this idea of fun and humor and a lot of thought being put into the outfit is also a very Gemini thing to do. Geminis are constantly thinking a couple of steps ahead, and I think that speaks to the whole idea of being these social creatures and having to accommodate to so many different social circles, and they're very good at that. Maybe it's just an air sign thing of being very good at balance in general. For Cancer representation, we have Hedy Lamarr. She is one of my favorite old Hollywood muses, so I'm very glad to talk about her in terms of Cancer representation. It is her rising sign, but she has so much water in her chart. She has Pisces as her midheaven, making her even more dreamy and ethereal in terms of aesthetics and this overall feeling that she gives off. She also has prevalent Scorpio in her. It is her sun and Mercury, but let's focus on her being a Cancer rising. Whenever I talk about Cancer rising, the term that I often repeat is being ethereal and dreamy, and I'm sorry, but Hedy Lamarr just like fits that to the T. If you just look at like the look in her eyes, it's like she's lost in a dream. And it's so funny that Cancer is ruled by the moon, and one of the most like recognizable visual representations that I see whenever I think of Hedy Lamarr is her role in I can't pronounce it, but I'll show the photo here, and it is such an iconic look to her that I often forget that's not the outfit she always wears. She actually wears a lot of modest clothing in general, but it still gives off a very dreamy and pin-up look. So I really think that actually speaks to what it means to have a Cancer aesthetic, Cancer rising aesthetic. And the things that she wears actually really do accommodate to theatrical romantics in general. She wears a lot of flowy things that still accommodate for her curve, and you see the sharpness in her shoulders as well. So I think she's a great example of if you are confused of what it means to be a theatrical romantic, where she has the softness and curve, but you see the sharpness everywhere else. And I think a lot of this old Hollywood glamour clothing that she wears, you can actually still wear today, and it still feels very honoring of a theatrical romantic lines. I think romantics in general, theatric and pure romantics, just look amazing in satiny, flowy, chiffon type of materials. I also think some of the slip dresses that she wears could be worn today as a great outfit formula for a theatrical romantic. I think slip dresses are an extremely underrated throw-on outfit. I would rather pick a slip dress over jeans and a t-shirt any day. And I think the V neckline and flowy sleeves that Hedy Lamarr you see a lot of her in is another great outfit formula for theatrical romantics. And also if you have a lot of Cancer representation in you, because it speaks to that flowiness and dreaminess that Cancers exude. For Leo representation, we have Selena Gomez. If you are familiar with the Kibbe body types, you'll know that she is the one who is often referenced whenever we talk about what does it mean to be a theatric romantic. And I love having her as a representation in Hollywood in general. Backtracking a little bit, she is a great Leo representation. It is her rising. It is also her Mercury and Venus. And I think when it comes to Leos and Geminis, there's something about those energies in tandem that just work beautifully in the limelight. The reason why I mentioned Geminis is just like what CL said, Selena Gomez said in an interview, whenever she is ready to put on an outfit or be styled that day, she thinks about what is the character she wants to play that day. The funny thing about her though, and in true Leo fashion, is she admits to like a lot of outfit changes that day because sometimes she wants to be multiple characters that day. Another thing that I really admire about her that people often don't really associate with Leos is she really prioritizes comfort into her outfit. She did mention that is something that became of more importance as she got older. But I think that still speaks true to Leo and being on brand with being as like a Leo rising. So Leos are often associated with being like this loud, performative type of person, which they are, but there's also this level of comfort. They aren't just the big party person, but they have this level of warmth to them, and I think that's where a bit of that comfort comes in, if that makes sense. So like one of her favorite outfits that she has worn is this like silky, very pajama-y type of outfit, and she wore it like out to dinner, and she said that was one of her favorite outfits because it was still very glamorous, and in my opinion it was kind of sensual. There's something very sensual about like pajama-esque type of clothing, even though it's on the more modest side, but it was still very glamorous because of the satin material, and there was that comfort. Another thing too about Selena Gomez that she talks about is she as she was branching out from Disney into what we know her career is now, she definitely favored outfits that emphasized something that was very high femme and made her feel like a woman. And she was very adamant about not feeling like a teenager. I think those kinds of silhouettes that have a very womanly type of aesthetic actually really do complement a theatrical romantic Kibbe body type. And she even mentions those are some of the outfits that she feels the most beautiful. Some of them were like this leather bustier, or some of these pieces that have corset type of details. And I think those can actually be worn in a very casual way for theatrical romantics, when you wear like a button-up with a corset, or you wear a tank top with corset boning in it, which is actually very popular and getting a lot easier to find. Just very fun about Leos. There's always a bit of humor and bright, sunshiny type of fun to their style. And she mentions that one of her favorite outfits that was kind of like her everyday thing was this Coach sweater with a dinosaur on it. And you know, I really love that about Leos. I think that's also why they do great in the limelight, because they're just so fun to be around. And a lot of Selena Gomez fans just know that she's very humble and not afraid to have fun, if that makes sense. For Virgo representation, we are going to be talking about silent film actress Theda Bara. Hopefully I'm pronouncing her last name right. But she has one of the most iconic faces. I think one of the films that she is most known for, that a lot of people visually recognize her in, is Cleopatra. So in terms of being a Virgo representation, it is her Venus and Mercury. So we're going to focus on what it means to have a Virgo Venus and how Theda Bara is a great example of that. So even though she is not a Virgo rising where it's a lot more evident, when Virgo is in your Venus sign, where it comes through is you're going to be very detail oriented, quality over quantity. In Theda Bara's case, I think she takes both, but you'll give me a second. And there is this subtle elegance to Virgos that are just naturally there. I think it's even there if it's your rising sign, but Virgos tend to naturally have this modesty to them and conservativeness, but can read as very elegant. Theda Bara, a lot of the looks that you see, she has a very dramatic eye makeup look to her, and it really emphasizes a lot of the costuming that she wears. And also there is every photo that I see of her, it's very elegant and kind of dreamy, and that really speaks to this Virgo modest elegance. Also the detail orientedness. Every single costume that I see her in is insane. Like, there is nothing subtle about that. I think her subtle elegance comes out more so in her makeup and her presence. She doesn't seem to have a very like loud and boisterous type of personality, and that really comes out in the intricate details of her style. And then in terms of being a theatric romantic, I think she is a great example of someone who wears things that accommodate to curve, but in a way that she wears a lot of flowy fabrics to do that. She has a very goddess-like style, but it's really hard to say because a lot of the pieces and photos we see her in are like very of costumey. But I think you could still take elements of that as a theatric romantic and implement them into your everyday style by wearing pieces that have see-through and chiffon elements and kind of drape over your curve and the softness. For Libra representation, we have Mila Kunis. She, like Selena Gomez, is often used as an example when talking about theatric romantics. But I would like to emphasize her representation as a Libra. So she has other placements in her chart that definitely play a huge role, but I love talking about her as a Libra rising type of representation because it is so prevalent in her interviews whenever she talks about her style. There was an interview, like I remember watching this in high school when she first starred in Black Swan, how she was talking about how it felt great that she was just back to being like t-shirts and jeans and white sneakers, and like that is her formula, and you definitely see that in a lot of her street photos. And this is where I want to talk about how she is often mentioned whenever talked about a theatric romantic representation when it comes to different Kibbe body type content creators, and they talk about how a lot of what she wears casually does not complement her body type, which I don't agree with. I feel like as a theatric romantic, yes, you're gonna often be recommended to wear these flowy, beautiful pieces that accommodate for curve, very high femme type of silhouettes. But I think Mila Kunis is actually a great example of you don't always have to wear that, especially in a casual way. It's not everyone's style to dress in this type of fashion. I get where some people say when she dresses a little too gamine or pieces that are often recommended for a flamboyant natural, she looks very boxy and constricted. But I think there are some silhouettes that are in Mila Kunis fashion that can still work for a theatric romantic that she is. So whenever she wears t-shirts and jeans, on my TikTok, a lot of people mention that they hate t-shirts and jeans, and a lot of the people that mentioned that were romantics and also naturals. But I think if you still like that effortless t-shirt jeans type of look that Mila Kunis has, I feel like a great way to go about that is wearing a type of fabric t-shirt that is very lightweight and cropped. I feel like when you are of the petite Kibbe, a cropped t-shirt is going to be a lot more flattering. And also a t-shirt that is not extremely crew neck or extremely constricting. Actually, this tank top is a good example of that, where it's a super lightweight fabric and it just kind of drapes along the décolletage. And I think if you want that Mila Kunis effortless energy and you still want to wear that, I think that works great. Right. Fran Drescher, she is going to be our Scorpio representation. I'm going to try my best not to use too many Fran Fine references, but I am going to be using some because Fran Drescher actually did have a lot of say in what the nanny wore in the show. There is some crossover there. I watched her Vogue interview and I'm going to try to reference the same outfits that she talks about as well as others. But in terms of being a Scorpio representation and in terms of what it means to be a femme fatale in a modern day terms or in a 90s fashion, because femme fatale, the aesthetic is often associated with like 1920s noir film or very like Hedy Lamarr type of aesthetic, but how it could be seen in the lens of the 90s and even today with Fran Drescher. So she mentioned even in her Vogue interview that some of the pieces that she wore like on the red carpet, pieces that show like back cleavage or a lot of skin, she was always unafraid to do that. And any piece or garment that had a bit of a rebellious nature to it, she was like, she felt like her best self. That was actually her exact words. Like she loved showing her more rebellious side whenever she was being outfitted, which is very true in nature to her Sagittarius rising side. But in terms of the Venus side, that I feel like when it comes to Scorpio Venus or Scorpio placements in general, they are so good at being in touch with that sensuality and sex appeal, that mysterious film noir type of look. And you can see that in some of the slip dresses that she wears. I think she is one of my favorite, she's actually my favorite theatric romantic, or speculated to be theatric romantic in terms of style. Even though she's not verified, I think if you are a theatric romantic and you are looking for this femme fatale Scorpio energy, she is a great example of that. She does a mix of short dresses, long dresses, and I think there is something really nice about the simplicity in some of the dresses that she wears in the cuts. Like, it is a super simple open neckline, but it has the loudness in the sparkle or the pattern. Even one of her most iconic dresses with the heart bag, it's a super simple black dress, and yet everybody wants it. And I also love when she wears her iconic Fran Fine look of a turtleneck, miniskirt, and tights. I think that is still Fran Drescher, even though it is Fran Fine. I think that is still speaks to the aesthetic of her look, especially of the 90s, and I think it is a great formula too if you are a theatric romantic. I think romantics in general, which I'm extremely jealous of as someone with broad shoulders, nothing wrong with broad shoulders, but something that romantics can pull off quite easily is turtlenecks, because their shoulders slope down a little bit more, and then you mix that in with that mini skirt. Sorry if I sound really passionate about it. Fran Drescher in general is one of my favorite fashion icons, and she is also, if you are confused about the proportions of what it means to have short limbs and being like petite in general, you can see it in her height, and especially when she wears like crop tops and mini skirts. That's another great outfit that really works together. And I think that is something to take inspiration from if you have prevalent Scorpio energy and you're wondering what does that mean. It doesn't always have to mean being in tune with the dark aesthetic, which I am guilty of pigeonholing Scorpios in. It sometimes is having a bit of that boldness and being in touch with that more sensual side, whether it is in the cut and silhouette or showing a little bit of unexpected skin. It doesn't have to be in a provocative way. All right, let's talk about Salma Hayek as a Sagittarius representation. So she is a Sagittarius rising. However, I feel like her Aries moon and Leo Venus also play a huge role in her style and personality. And she also has that hint of Virgo-ness. Let's focus on her being a Sagittarius representation and what that means. So the signature look that I just always have associated with Salma Hayek is this sensual V neckline, bodycon type of dress, and oftentimes in satin fabrication. And I think this is actually in a beautiful formula for theatric romantics in general. I feel like when it comes to Salma Hayek, she has always just done her own thing. There is a bit of like eclecticness to her style in terms of the color. She has always never been one to shy away from these beautiful jewel tones that actually complement her color season, which I believe is a dark winter. I feel like there is this natural sense of confidence that comes out of a Sagittarius prevalent chart in general. And I think the fire signs in her placements also like heighten and complement her Sagittarius rising. She has also never been one to shy away from these more sensual fabrications that are like satiny and silky, and these different takes on a very fitted slip dress. I feel like the slip dress in general is a beautiful, easy throw-on thing for a theatric romantic. I forgot to mention this before, but I think one thing to keep an eye out for when wearing these slip dresses or even V necklines, there are still dresses out there that still won't accommodate for curve and will have a bit of a boxiness to that. And a way to avoid that is picking, and you see it in Salma Hayek, she picks some of these slip dresses that have a bit of stretch to that so that it does still accommodate to the curve that you have. Or if you were to wear a slip dress that is on the more woven side, like satiny woven material, picking a dress that has darts or seaming that still accommodates to the curve. You can also complement that with harnesses. I don't have a photo of Salma Hayek in that, but that's just a side tip. I feel like her being a Sagittarius rising is just pretty straightforward. There's like not really much to go into it, except that she has just always been very comfortable in her own skin. And I think that's just something that comes naturally to a Sagittarius. They very often don't care what other people think about them, and that comfortability in their skin really shines through in their garments. Like if you see Salma Hayek's clothing, she never really cares if she's too modest or too sensual. She really marches to the beat of her own drum. And I think she's just a great example of a Sagittarius representation that doesn't shy away from some of these fun patterns, jewel tones, and very fun and bold type of cuts. All right, so for Capricorn representation, we have actress Marilyn McCoo. She is a prevalent face that you may have seen or known for the 1960s and 70s. When it comes to Capricorn rising in general and how I feel like Marilyn McCoo really showcases that is in her even most glamorous styles that are very quintessential to the 1970s fashion, which I do love. They're still very minimalistic and they have a very classic, elegant look to them. Even when she's wearing these very bright and shiny, probably sequined dresses, they still feel very minimal in a very nice and elegant way. And they are still understated, but they do the job in terms of what 1970s trends and styles were doing, especially as a performer. She wore these very straightforward cuts and silhouettes that I think really look beautiful on a theatric romantic in general, which is what she is, where she has that classic V neckline or open neckline that I think looks extremely natural and glows on a theatric romantic. And even when she wears a more closed neckline, like that typical closed collar that you see in mod fashion, it still is balanced out as a mini dress. And I think that's a great way to go about that. I know I mentioned that romantics and naturals look great in open necklines, but I think romantics in general can still wear those closed necklines without having to accommodate with much else. I just mention the open necklines quite often is because there's just something that, I don't know, that theatrical romantics absolutely like glow and look natural in when these open necklines, where it's like open here and then the curve is accommodated for. And I think it's because it's very quintessential to a whole Greek goddess type of look. There's also this look that she has where it's a very soft turtleneck and kind of like a gold leather jacket, and it just works so well, and it has that boss energy that I often associate with Capricorn risings, and I feel like that's what she gives off. When I say Capricorn representation in general gives off that CEO energy, it doesn't always mean in a corporate sense, but more so, and you see it in Marilyn McCoo's energy and presence, is they're here to get the job done, and they tend to also be very multi-talented, and they're here to make that dough and show you what they've got. And they're just like here to not really mess around, and style and fashion can really express that. And I think she showcases that very well in her performances, where it's understated and she just looks amazing doing it. Like you take Capricorn energy very seriously because they have that energy that makes you want to pay attention. So for Aquarius representation, we have Aquarius Sun and Venus Morgan Fairchild, who is, I believe she is a verified theatric romantic by Kibbe. So you can definitely see a lot of the clothing and pieces that she wears accommodate for her curve and petite height. And she does have a bit of that sharpness that you see in the shoulders and along her arms. I think where her Aquarius energy is prevalent is a lot of the pieces that she wears, there is some sort of unexpected element. I also think purple is her color, but that's besides the point. So apparently a lot of the roles that Morgan Fairchild plays in are very aggressive roles. And you can see that in the sharpness in her eyes, but it's not even something that you notice right away. There's actually a lot of softness to her overall demeanor, and the sharp look in her eyes that go pair perfectly with her aggressive roles, I think is very on brand for Aquarius energy in general. There's a lot of unexpectedness when it comes to Aquarius, and that's actually the beauty in them, and that is something that you could take advantage of in terms of dressing and style. There's always going to be something unexpected and fun when it comes to an Aquarius's like Aquarius Venus personal style. They're very versatile, they're very adaptive. I think that's just in tune with being an air sign where there is a lot of adaptability in their style. But when it comes to Morgan Fairchild, personally, I think she shows a great example of this like early 1980s retro style in a very glamorous way. It is still slightly understated, yet bold at the same time. I think there's just something about Aquariuses where there is a lot of oxymorons that actually really work well together. I've mentioned this with Marina Diamondis, or Marina and the Diamonds, where there is a bit of that futuristic and retro aspect to her style. And I think you can see that in Aquarius energy in general, where you have things that don't normally work well together, or some people may think are weird or too eclectic, and yet Aquarius energies tend to meld those elements perfectly to create a very unique sense of style. And I think you see that a little bit in Morgan Fairchild, where you have a bit of that softness and power dressing, where she has that soft demeanor but like sharpness in the look in her eyes. And if you have strong Aquarius energy, definitely take advantage of that. As a theatrical romantic, I'm gonna sound like I'm repeating myself, but she has these beautiful flowy type of dresses, and she does have these power lines that are prevalent in 1980s fashion that highlight the shoulders, which is funny because theatrical romantics don't have prominent shoulders, so it doesn't have that 1980s look. Instead, it reads as something very soft, and it kind of drapes down too. So I actually think that is still something to look to. Of my favorite outfits of hers, though, is this super fun black dress that is covered with like rainbow sequins, and that's like a mix of something that looks great on a theatrical romantic and screams Aquarius energy in general. I feel like more people should talk about Morgan Fairchild's style because there's something very sensual, eclectic, and fun about her style, and I think she's a great muse and inspiration if you are a theatrical romantic. Okay, last but not least, for Pisces representation, we have Pisces rising actress Donna Mills. If you look at her photos, she is the quintessential, very dreamy type of 1980s photos where it's a little hazy, and I think there's something about her blonde hair and these pastel colors that just scream Pisces energy. Another thing that feels extremely Pisces about her is a lot of the pieces that she wears are very understated. They're very minimalistic and yet very glamorous at the same time. And I think it's that balance of she wears like these super simple, minimalistic, like tailored pieces or knitwear, and then it's complemented with she has like purple eyeshadow underneath her eyes, and the way she poses, she knows what she's doing. And there's something about Pisces, the last signs in general, they tend to be the underestimated ones of the sign, like Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. I don't know why, but I feel like a lot of those signs as rising signs, they tend to be underestimated. And you can also see that in style as well. When it comes to Donna Mills, there's also something very timeless about the pieces that she wears. Like a lot of the stuff that we see her wearing in the 80s can actually be worn today. And I think that really speaks to Pisces rising in general. I can say this from experience, but I feel like when a Pisces rising is picking out their clothes to wear, there has to be a lot of meaning behind it. And I think it's just because we're sentimental creatures in general, and we have to have, in order for us to be in possession of it, we have to have a lot of meaning attached to it. And maybe it's just because we're very sensitive, but that translates perfectly in a Pisces fashion as well. And there's also something about satiny, very high shine type of fabrics that look really good on Donna Mills. And I think it's just because it complements that dreamy look in her blue eyes type of deal. As a theatric romantic, I think all of this flow and naturally draping that you see really do complement her theatric romantic self. I think as she got older, she wore a lot more tailored pieces. So if you're looking for like suiting ideas or tailored suit on a theatric romantic, I think she is a great example of that. I think regardless of her age, like then and even now, whenever she wears these V necklines or open necklines, it really accommodates to her as a theatric romantic. It's so funny how some people wear like these color palettes that just work naturally with their rising sign. If you watched this whole thing, thank you so much. I only have one more Kibbe body type video to do left, and that is soft gamines. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, have a good week. Bye.